Hey there, welcome back to my channel. My name is Brittany Bundles, and today's video is going to be all about chargebacks and inquiries, which is really important if you're running any type of e-commerce business because you want to know all the information ahead of time before you actually run into any trouble. The longer that you stay in business, the higher your chances are of receiving a customer trying to attempt a chargeback. So it's very important before you decide which merchant you're going to work with that you are okay and you understand exactly how their chargeback process works. I'm going to be making a separate video going over how chargeback or how to prevent chargebacks in general, but I'm going to focus specifically on Shopify in this video. So if you want more information, you can always go to the Shopify Help Center. I'm going to do this in a voiceover setting, and I'm going to be scrolling pretty quickly just so I can get this information out. And again, if you have any questions, you can leave them below, or you can go to the Shopify Help Center. So we're on the chargeback processes. So as you can see on the screen, you have different chargeback statuses. You have open, submitted, won, or lost. And it shows exactly what each status means. I do want to point this out though, before we go any further, that if you are using Shopify payments, chargebacks are decided by the cardholder's bank. Shopify can't influence or revert this decision. Shopify can assist you by providing information to dispute the chargeback, and you can refer to their section on chargebacks for more information. So I wanted to put that out there just because I'm not sure if you are aware of that. When you get a chargeback or inquiry on an order made with Shopify payments, Shopify collects evidence and sends it to the credit card company on the due date. Before Shopify sends the response, you can add additional evidence in the Shopify admin. After the evidence is submitted, the chargeback or inquiry is resolved within 120 days. It also goes over adding evidence and submitting a chargeback. So Shopify automatically collects evidence and sends to the credit card company on the due date to increase your chances of winning the chargeback. You can add evidence to support your claim. The type of evidence that you should add depends on the reason for the chargeback. And then it goes into assemble and organize your items of evidence using the following guidelines. It is really important whenever you get an order to make sure that you are collecting as much information as you possibly can. Although Shopify is going to collect the information that they can, it still is going to help you to have as much information as you possibly can. You know, sometimes when we hear the phrase less is more, that is to the contrary in this aspect. I work with different entrepreneurs, and I'm still going to scroll down so you can see some other you can see the steps on the screen. But I wanted to explain to you all that I work with entrepreneurs that have experienced chargebacks, a lot of chargebacks, and they didn't have an e-commerce site that they were working for. They would use other means like PayPal, and I can't remember all of the different ways that they would get the money for their orders, but they didn't have websites. I'm talking about these specific group of clients that I work with. And one thing that was challenging was actually being able to go back and find evidence that they actually sent out the package. It is really important if you're not using your website, like an e-commerce platform where the e-commerce platform is collecting and keeping track of your information, that you make sure you're keeping track of your tracking numbers, your receipts. You make sure that you have all of the documentation that you need, because although I enjoy working with PayPal, you're still going to need to provide evidence in a lot of cases when you are hit with a chargeback. To prove that you actually sent out the package. You just saying you sent out the package with no evidence, no tracking, that's not going to suffice in every scenario. Chargeback and inquiry. So if you accept credit cards on your store, then it's likely you need to deal with chargebacks or inquiries. When a cardholder has an issue with a charge on their credit card, they can contact their bank to dispute the charge. The bank then makes a chargeback or inquiry. The cardholder can be one of your customers or someone who believes that their card was used on your store without their permission. If the cardholder's bank makes a chargeback, then the bank takes the disputed amount from you right away. The cardholder's bank also takes a chargeback fee from you. If the cardholder's bank makes an inquiry, then they don't take the disputed amount or a fee right away. So if you get an inquiry, this is pretty much the bank wanting to know more about the order. They're wanting to get more information from you to do their investigation process. I would rather have an inquiry than a chargeback, because the inquiry gives you time to submit the evidence before the funds are right out of your account. So keeping track of tracking numbers, keeping track of signatures, keeping track of the fraud analysis. If you are using Shopify, which is one reason that I really enjoy using Shopify because of all of the analytics that it comes with, look over to the fraud analysis. See if there's a high fraud alert or concern. I actually did a podcast interview that's going to come out this Thursday with Nikki Smith. She's the owner of Nikki Smith Hair Collection. So if you haven't tuned in to that podcast episode, be sure to come back on Thursday because we'll have that podcast uploaded. But she was mentioning how when she gets an order that seems suspicious, she urges her customers to go through one of her buy now, pay later options like Klarna or Afterpay, because they do a more in-depth process, a more in-depth, verification to make sure that the customer is actually legitimate. And so, or the purchase is actually legitimate and it's by the right person. It's not a fraudulent order. And so I thought that was a great idea because that does happen. I remember someone placing an order through my website using Klarna and saying that they never received the package. Now, it's showed delivered on my side, and so that's the information that I needed to hold on to prove that I sent out the hair and that the hair actually was delivered. The post office was under investigation because they didn't know if the post office actually handed the hair to them or if they handed the hair to someone else. But at that point, I was protected. My company was protected because I made sure that I had proof that the order was shipped out. So having your tracking numbers and making sure that you review the orders, again, making sure that you have signatures if you captured them, whatever additional information you have. And I'm going to make a separate video going over different items that you can collect and more ways that you can kind of cipher through the order to make sure that you are processing legitimate orders, because it is not fun to get a chargeback. It's not fun to send out your products and then have the money taken out of your account as well. So it is important to make sure that you're doing your due diligence and that you're working with an e-commerce platform that will allow you to save some of that information, just in case there's a hiccup or there's a concern or inquiry or even a chargeback. You're able to fight the charge as efficiently as you possibly can. If you want to examine all of your orders before they're fulfilled, you can capture payments manually. So I wanted to point that out before I scroll down a little bit. I have my store set up on payment capture manual. I don't have it automatically set up. Now, I used to have it automatically set up. And what that is if a customer goes to my Shopify store, badchickhair.com, and let's say they purchase a business consultation, right? So they purchase their consultation, automatically those funds would be taken from their account. And so I would get an order that the payment's processed, and I would also get an order because I'm using PayPal for my payment merchant that I just received X amount of dollars in my PayPal balance. And so that would be it. And at that point, if I decided or noticed that there was a concern with the order, then I would need to cancel the order and refund the amount back. So instead of doing all of that, I decided to go over to manual payments. And so manual payments gives me the freedom to actually review each order before I accept the order and before I go ahead and collect the funds. It gives you an option to go ahead and collect the funds if you decide to proceed with that order. And so that's what I do now. So if you all are using Shopify and you've had experience with fraudulent orders or chargebacks, even if you haven't, going to manual orders is a great way to be able to review those orders before they're actually processed. It also goes over some of the evidence that you can include, so like your subscription cancellation policy, if that applies. So let's say that you're offering a subscription and someone is charged for a subscription and they're saying, hey, I didn't want this. Hey, I didn't know that it was a recurring charge. Making sure you have your policies outlined is very, very important, because if you don't have that, then if a customer says they didn't know, how are you going to combat that? So you always want to think steps ahead. If this happens, then I would do this. It's really important. I've made tons of videos on this channel about making sure that you set the right expectation, making sure that you have your policies outlined, that your guidelines outlined. If you don't offer any refunds, then it's very important that you are clear with that and that you have that stated on your website. If you're offering a subscription service, again, it is very important that you outline how your subscription service works. So including when your customers need to cancel, how much notice do you need? If they cancel in the middle of their subscription, will they get a refund? Do they have to wait until the next billing cycle for the effect to actually kick in? So just kind of going over that information. So the chargeback is marked as a credit not processed if the customer informed you that the purchased product was returned or that the transaction with you was canceled, but you have not yet refunded or credited the customer. So you can start by trying to get in touch with the customer. You can't issue a refund after a chargeback has been made, but you might be able to explain the situation or figure out another way to solve the problem. If the customer asks for an inquiry, then you can issue a refund. If you can resolve the problem with the customer, then you should tell the customer to contact their bank and say that you want them to drop the chargeback or inquiry. All right, so that's another point that I wanted to point out with you. I'm just going through and I'm going to pick out the important parts, some of the important parts. But again, like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, if you do want more information, you can always go to the Shopify Help Center. I just like doing these overviews to kind of give you a general idea of how this works. So let's say that you work with your customer directly and they have submitted a chargeback or an inquiry, and you all are working and they find out, let's say that someone placed an order for hair extensions on my website, right? And they went to their bank and they didn't recognize the charge on their statement. And they said, hey, I'm going to go ahead and dispute that because I don't recognize it. Then they get home and they end up talking to their family over dinner, and their daughter says, hey, Mom, remember you said that I could purchase some hair for prom? This is what I did. Bad Chick Hair is the company that I purchased my extensions from. And the mom is like, oh my gosh, I didn't know. So when you contact the customer, or the customer contacts you, you say, hey, I noticed that you issued a chargeback. I want to verify some information with you and make sure that we get you taken care of. Is now a good time? And if she says yes, and you all discover that, okay, hey, I did place that chargeback, but I realized that it's a legitimate charge, at that point, what you can do is let her know that it's okay. I'll note the order, because there is a section in your Shopify admin where you can put notes in your order. So note the order and then ask that customer to contact their banking institution and let the bank know. The bank needs to know in order to drop that chargeback. It's not enough for her to call you. I'm using her in this scenario as an example, but it's not enough for her to call you and say, hey, I realized I made a mistake. That customer actually needs to contact their bank and let the bank know as well. And then set a date on the initial call. So say, hey, can you reach out and call your bank? If she says yes, when can I expect, when can I follow back up with you? I want to put a note in your account. And let's say that she says, I'll call tomorrow. And then you both agree to a date that you can follow back up, because it's really important to make sure that that is dropped so that you get your money back, or so that the inquiry is closed out. When you let your customers use credit cards on your store, there is a chance of getting chargebacks or inquiries. You can follow some general steps to prevent some chargebacks and inquiries. So investigate suspicious orders, like I advised earlier, before you fulfill them. Also, make sure that your contact information is easy to find on your store. Respond to customers quickly when they contact you with any problems. Inform customers about your store policies and keep your customers updated throughout the shipping process. Use online tracking and delivery confirmation when you can. So again, I'm going to be doing a part 2 going into more in-depth detail. This was just a brief overview of how you can prevent some chargeback and inquiries, and also how it works, especially if you're using Shopify. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I will talk to you all in the next video. Bye.